My name is Natalie Harper. I'm 34 years old. And for 6 years, I lived with a ghost. Not the kind that rattles chains or haunts old houses. The kind that sits at your dinner table, sleeps between you and your husband, whispers into every argument. The ghost's name was Sophia Bennett, Daniel's ex-girlfriend. At least, that's what everyone called her. His ex, his past, the woman he supposedly left behind years before we met. The funny thing is, I never felt like she was behind us. I always felt like she was standing directly between us. Daniel and I had been together for 8 years, and married for 6. We didn't have children. Looking back, that may have been the only truly fortunate decision we ever made. When we first started dating, Daniel rarely mentioned Sophia. A story here, a memory there. Nothing unusual. Everyone has a past. Everyone has old relationships. I wasn't jealous. I wasn't threatened. At least not at first. Then, the comparisons started. Small ones. So small, I convinced myself they didn't matter. I'd forget to pick something up from the store. Daniel would sigh. Sophia never forgot things like that. I'd laugh awkwardly. He'd laugh too. Like it was a harmless joke. But jokes become patterns. Patterns become habits. Habits become wounds. A few months later, we attended one of my family gatherings. On the drive home, Daniel stared out the passenger window. Sophia loved family events. I glanced at him. What? Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It never was. Over the years, Sophia became the invisible standard against which every part of me was measured. If I got tired after a long week, Sophia always had more energy. If I made a mistake, Sophia was more detail-oriented. If I struggled at work, Sophia became a manager before 30. If I cooked dinner, Sophia was an amazing cook. Every comparison landed softly. But 6 years of soft impacts can shatter concrete. I tried talking to him more than once, actually. Dozens of times. Danielle. It hurts when you compare me to her. He'd roll his eyes. You take everything personally. I'm serious. I don't mean anything by it. Later it became, you're being too sensitive. Then, you're insecure? Then, why are you always looking for problems? Eventually I stopped bringing it up, not because it stopped hurting, because I got tired of being told my pain wasn't real. The worst part wasn't Sophia. The worst part was what happened to me. I started questioning myself constantly. Maybe I wasn't ambitious enough. Maybe I wasn't thoughtful enough. Maybe I wasn't enough. That poison works slowly. You don't notice it entering your bloodstream. You only notice one day that you've forgotten what confidence feels like. The final breaking point came on a Tuesday. An ordinary Tuesday. The kind of day that should have disappeared into memory forever. I got home from work exhausted, but I still spent an hour making dinner. Pasta. Homemade sauce. One of Daniel's favorites. Or at least it used to be. The kitchen smelled warm and comforting. Garlic. Tomatoes. Fresh herbs. For a brief moment, I felt hopeful. Maybe we'd have a nice evening. Maybe things could still improve. Daniel sat across from me at the table, scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up when I placed the plate in front of him. Thanks. I sat down, took a bite, waited. He tasted it, made a face. Not a dramatic one. A subtle one. Almost worse. The expression someone makes when they're disappointed, but trying not to say it. Then he sighed. This is kind of bland. I froze. What? He shrugged. Then came the sentence. The same sentence, in 1,000 different forms. Sophia used to make this incredible bolognese. Restaurant quality. Something inside me shifted. Not exploded. Not erupted. Shifted. Like a lock finally clicking open. I put my fork down carefully. The room suddenly felt very quiet. Daniel didn't notice. He was still scrolling. Still comparing. Still talking. Sophia really understood seasoning. I stared at him. 6 years. 6 years of this. 6 years of being second place to a woman who wasn't even in the room. Then he delivered the final blow. My ex would never disappoint me like this. The words hung in the air. For a moment I simply looked at him. really looked at him. And for the first time, I saw something clearly. It wasn't that Sophia was perfect. It was that Daniel needed her to be, because as long as she stayed perfect in his memory, he never had to appreciate what was right in front of him. I took a slow breath. Then I spoke. Then maybe you married the wrong person? Daniel's head snapped up. His eyes widened. What did you just say? You heard me. The room went completely silent. Daniel stared at me like I had spoken in a language he didn't understand. For once, he had no clever comeback, no exhausted sigh, no dismissive little laugh. So I continued, if Sophia was so perfect, if she never disappointed you, if she remembered everything, loved every family event, seasoned every meal correctly, and somehow became the measuring stick for my entire existence, then maybe you should have married her instead of me. His face changed. The color drained from it. Natalie. No, I said quietly. You don't get to say my name, like you're the wounded one. He pushed his chair back. You're overreacting. There it was. The old shield. The same word he'd used for years whenever I tried to explain that he was hurting me. Overreacting. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny left. Lucky for you, I said, keeping my voice calm. I can fix that mistake. What does that mean? It means you don't have to stay married to disappointing old me. I stood, took my plate to the kitchen, and scraped the pasta into the trash. The sound was small. Bye now. Daniel followed me only as far as the doorway. Are you serious right now? I rinsed my plate. Very. Then I walked to my home office and closed the door. My hands were shaking by the time I sat down, not because I was unsure, because I was finally sure, 8 months earlier. After another brutal argument about my career, I had secretly consulted a divorce attorney. Back then, Daniel had compared my work progress to Sophia's. Again, I remembered sitting in that attorney's office feeling embarrassed, like I was betraying my marriage just by asking questions. The attorney had been calm, practical, kind. He explained the basics. The house, the mortgage, assets, waiting periods, what documentation mattered. Then he handed me his card. Call when you're ready. That night, I opened my email and wrote to him. I told him I was ready. Daniel didn't come into the office. Maybe he thought silence would make me regret it. Maybe he thought I would cry, apologize, and return to the table. I didn't. When he finally came to bed, I pretended to be asleep. He lay beside me in the dark. I could hear his breathing, uneven, heavy, like he wanted to cry but didn't want me to know. For years, that sound would have softened me. That night, it didn't. The next morning, I woke before him, showered, dressed, left for work without saying goodbye. Adzice tres prezece a? M. My phone buzzed. Daniel. About last night. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long moment, then replied, I agree. We should talk about the divorce process tonight. He called immediately. I declined. Then I texted, I'm at work. We can discuss it tonight. After that came the flood. Message after message. Natalie. Stop. You're being dramatic. I didn't mean it like that. You can't throw away a marriage over one comment. One comment. That was the story he had already started telling himself. Not 6 years. Not a pattern. Not a slow, emotional starvation. One comment. By lunch, I met my attorney. I told him everything. The comparisons, the dinner, the text messages, the way Daniel always turned my pain back on me. My attorney listened without interrupting. Then he said we could move forward. Our state required a separation period before the divorce could be finalized. The house would need to be handled carefully, because both our names were on the mortgage. Assets would be divided. Documentation mattered. I wasn't trying to destroy Daniel. I wasn't trying to punish him. I just wanted out. Clean. Fair. Done. That evening, Daniel was waiting when I got home. His eyes were red. There were tissues on the coffee table, but his posture told me he had rehearsed this. I'm sorry. He started. I set down my bag. I know I compare you to Sophia sometimes. Sometimes, he swallowed. Okay. More than sometimes. But it doesn't mean anything. It's just venting. Everyone complains about their spouse. No, I said. Everyone doesn't. He looked away. I have never once compared you to any of my exes. I continued. Not once in 8 years. Do you know why? Because I chose you. I married you. And when you choose someone, you stop making them compete with your past. His face crumpled. So that's it, one fight and you want a divorce. This isn't one fight. My voice cracked for the first time. And I hated that. This is 6 years of being told I'm not good enough. 6 years of being measured against a woman who, let me remind you, is not your wife. Natalie. Every time I told you it hurt. You said I was sensitive? Insecure. Dramatic. So go ahead. He blinked. Go ahead and say it again. Tell me this is my problem. He said nothing. That silence told me more than any apology could. I've contacted my attorney. I said. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Cooperate. And we both leave with something. Fight. And we both lose more. Daniel stared at me. For the first time, I think he understood I wasn't bluffing. 5 days later, everything escalated. Of course it did. Daniel went into damage control, but not the kind where someone looks inward and says, I hurt the person I love. No. This was the kind where he decided the real problem was that I wouldn't accept being hurt anymore. First, he called his mother. Within 2 hours, my mother-in-law, Margaret Harper, was at our house. She walked in like she owned the air itself. Natalie. What is this I hear about you? Abandoning my son. No hello. No question. Just accusation. I'm not abandoning anyone. I said. We're getting divorced. Daniel appeared behind her. It is not a decision. I never agreed to this. It's happening whether you agree or not. I said. That's how divorce works. One person can file. I'm filing. Margaret's face twisted. After everything my son gave you, I almost left, but I didn't. She launched into a speech. How ungrateful I was. How Daniel had sacrificed his best years. How I would grow old alone and regret throwing away a good man. I let her talk. When she finally stopped, breathing hard, I asked, Are you finished? Because I have work emails to answer. She looked stunned. I don't think anyone had ever refused to feed her outrage before. You're making a huge mistake. Noted. I said. You can leave now. She didn't. She stayed for 3 more hours, crying with Daniel in the living room, while I worked behind a closed office door. Eventually, Daniel left with her. He said he was staying with his parents until I came to my senses. Fine by me. That night, the house was peaceful for the first time in years. I made dinner, seasoned it exactly how I wanted. Nobody criticized it. Nobody compared it to Sophia's. For a few hours, I remembered what peace tasted like. But peace didn't last. Over the next few days, messages started coming in. Friends of his. Mutual friends. Even a few people from my own extended circle who knew Daniel's family. The story was simple. Natalie had snapped. Natalie was unstable. Natalie had abandoned her loving husband for no reason. Not one mention of Sophia. Not one mention of 6 years of comparisons. One of Daniel's friends texted, I can't believe you're doing this to him. He always said you were the love of his life. I screenshotted it and replied, funny. He spent 6 years telling me Sophia was better than me at everything. Ask him about that before deciding who the victim is. No response. Then came the house. On day 4, I got a call from the mortgage company. Someone had been asking whether one spouse could refinance or assume the loan without the other's consent, if there were concerns about marital instability. That someone was Daniel, before we had even sat down with both attorneys, before paperwork, before negotiation. He was already trying to see if he could take the house from me. I called my attorney immediately. He told me to document everything, and absolutely not to leave the house. Physical possession could matter. That night, Margaret called me. Not Danielle. Margaret, I think we should talk adult to adult. She said. I'm listening. My son made mistakes. I understand that. But you're throwing away a good marriage over wounded pride. With all due respect, I said. You have no idea what this marriage felt like from the inside. I know Daniel loves you. Does he? Because for 6 years, all I've heard is how much better Sophia was. Silence. Every meal. Every mistake. Every career decision. Every family event. I was compared to her and found lacking. Is that what love looks like to you? Margaret's voice softened. He's under pressure. Work has been stressful. You know Daniel struggles with insecurity. I know, I said. And I spent 6 years being patient with it. But I am not a rehabilitation center for his insecurities. I was supposed to be his wife. She began crying. Please give him one more chance. He'll go to therapy. He should, I said. For himself. Not as a bargaining chip. Then I hung up. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. No words, at first. Just a screenshot. It was from Daniel's social media. 3 years earlier, a photo of him and Sophia at someone's wedding, standing close, smiling, like they shared a secret. The caption read, "Some connections never really fade." I stared at it until the room blurred. Daniel had never told me he saw her. Never mentioned running into her. Never admitted she was still anywhere near his life. Then another message came from the unknown number. Thought you should know they've been in contact more than he's admitted? Sorry. I sat there in the dark, with the phone in my hand. And suddenly, every comparison felt different. Not careless. Not random. Connected. Alive. Sophia hadn't been a ghost in our marriage. She had been invited in, and Daniel had been holding the door open the entire time. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photograph, Daniel and Sophia standing together at a wedding, smiling, comfortable, familiar. Not like two people who had simply run into each other by accident, like two people who had never fully let go, for years. I had believed the comparisons came from nostalgia, an unhealthy habit, a lack of emotional maturity, but now a darker possibility had entered the room. What if Sophia wasn't just a memory? What if she had been an active part of our marriage all along? The next morning, I started looking. Not obsessively, not illegally. I wasn't hacking accounts or hiring investigators. I was simply paying attention to things I had never thought I needed to question. Old social media posts. Shared cloud photo backups. Archived messages. Connected to accounts we both used. Pieces. Fragments. Enough to create a picture. And what I found made my stomach turn. There wasn't just one meeting. There were several. A coffee shop downtown. A restaurant near the waterfront. A concert while I had been away on a work trip. Another dinner. Another meetup. Another smiling photograph. All hidden. All omitted. All quietly removed from the version of reality Daniel had presented to me. By the third day of digging, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my laptop screen with tears burning behind my eyes. Not because I was heartbroken anymore. Because I felt humiliated. The signs had been there. The comparisons, the obsession, the idealization. I just hadn't wanted to see them. Then I found messages. Not complete conversations. Fragments. But enough. Enough to understand. I miss our conversations. You always understood me better than anyone. Sometimes I wonder what life would have looked like if things had gone differently. I read those lines over and over. Each one felt like another crack, spreading through the foundation of everything I'd believed. Was it physical cheating? I didn't know. Maybe not. Maybe it never crossed that line. But sitting there, staring at those words, I realized something important. The technical definition no longer mattered. Because emotional betrayal still destroys trust. Sometimes more thoroughly than anything physical. I took screenshots of everything. Organized them. Backed them up. Then, forwarded everything to my attorney. His response came later that afternoon. Short, professional, clear. Continue documenting. This significantly strengthens your position if he attempts to claim abandonment without cause. Without cause? I almost laughed. The irony was unbelievable. For years Daniel had convinced me. I was imagining the problem. Now the evidence was sitting in folders on my computer. Real. Documented. Impossible to dismiss. 3 days later, Daniel came back to the house. Not to reconcile. At least not officially. He said he needed some clothes and personal items. But the moment he stepped inside, I could see another purpose behind his visit. Hope. Desperation. Negotiation. He stood awkwardly in the living room. Nathalie. I looked up from the couch. What? Can we talk? We are talking. His shoulders sagged. Please don't do that. Do what? Act like you don't care. That almost made me smile. After 6 years of being told my feelings were unimportant. Suddenly, mine were the ones that mattered. What do you want? Danielle. He took a deep breath. One chance. I said nothing. Just one real chance. His eyes filled with tears. We could try couples therapy. There it was. The last card. The emergency exit. The thing people suggest when they realize consequences are finally arriving. 3 months. He continued. Just give me 3 months. Therapy. Counseling. Whatever it takes. I studied him quietly. Then, I opened my phone, pulled up a screenshot, and held it out. His face drained of color immediately. He recognized it. Of course he did. Sophia. The messages. The hidden meetings. The secrets. You've been meeting your ex behind my back for 3 years. The room became very still. Daniel looked like someone had punched him. How did you? Doesn't matter. Nathalie. 3 years. My voice remained calm, far calmer than I felt. 3 years while comparing me to her. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing happened. I stared at him. I swear to God. Nothing physical ever happened. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. You think that's the important part? It is important. No. I stood. No. Danielle. The important part is that you built a secret relationship with the exact woman you spent 6 years using as a weapon against me. He started crying. Real crying. Not strategic tears. Not manipulation. Actual panic. I'm sorry. I know. I was stupid. I know. I never wanted to hurt you. That one hurt. Because I believed him. I genuinely believed he never intended to destroy our marriage. He simply cared more about protecting his fantasy than protecting me. And sometimes the damage is exactly the same. He sat down heavily. What do I do? For a second I almost answered. Almost tried to help him. Old habits die hard. Then I remembered how many times I'd asked him that same question. What do I do? How do I make this better? How do I stop hurting? And every time he told me I was overreacting, so I simply said, you accept the consequences. He cried harder. An hour later, he left with several boxes of clothes. I didn't stop him. Didn't argue. Didn't comfort him. I just watched him walk out the front door. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel responsible for someone else's emotional state. 2 days later, things became even stranger. My manager approached my desk around 11 in the morning. He looked confused. Nathalie. Yeah. There's a woman in the lobby claiming she's your mother-in-law. My stomach dropped. What? Says it's a family emergency. Of course. Margaret. I walked to the lobby. And there she was. Standing in the middle of my workplace. Looking furious. Nathalie. What are you doing here? She crossed her arms, trying to talk to a rational adult. I glanced around. Coworkers were pretending not to watch, which meant they were absolutely watching. This is my workplace. You won't answer calls. Because we're not having this conversation. You are destroying my son's life. I took a slow breath. Then another. Margaret. What? Leave. No. Her voice rose. You owe him a chance. I looked directly at her. "You're embarrassing yourself." The words hit harder than I expected. Her face flushed red. "You can't. Coming to someone's workplace is harassment." Several heads turned. A few people stopped walking. "If you don't leave right now, security will escort you out." Silence. Then she pointed at me. "You'll regret this." "No." I said it softly. "No. I won't." A few minutes later, she finally left. My manager closed the office door behind us afterward. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "Difficult divorce." He winced. "Understood." Then he added, "If she comes back, we'll handle it." That evening I documented everything. The date, the time, the witnesses, the conversation. My attorney was pleased. Not because of the drama, because it established a pattern. Boundary violations, pressure, harassment. And then something happened that I never saw coming. Sophia contacted me. Directly. Not anonymously. Not through a friend. A direct message. From her actual account. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. The message was surprisingly short. "Natalie, I heard about the divorce. I want you to know that nothing physical ever happened between Daniel and me during your marriage. That doesn't excuse everything. I should have established better boundaries. I'm sorry." I kept reading. "For what it's worth, when we met, he talked about you constantly." My heart tightened. Then came the next sentence. "Mostly complaints." If I'm being honest, I stared at the screen. Sophia continued. "I always wondered why he married someone he seemed so determined to compare to other people." I blinked. Read it again. Then again. The woman I'd spent years viewing as my rival had apparently understood the problem better than my own husband. Then came the final blow. "He told me he compared you to me because he thought it would motivate you to improve." My jaw literally dropped. Sophia wrote, "I told him several times that it was cruel and would eventually destroy your relationship." I sat frozen. For 6 years. 6 years. Even Sophia had warned him, and he hadn't listened. I took screenshots of the entire conversation. Sent them to my attorney. Then, I did something petty. Something immature. Something I still don't regret. I forwarded every screenshot to Daniel. No explanation. No commentary. No insults. Just the conversation. His ex-girlfriend condemning his behavior. His perfect Sophia. The woman he'd worshipped for years. Calling him wrong. My phone exploded within minutes. Call after call after call. 16 in total. I ignored everyone. The final voicemail arrived around midnight. Daniel was sobbing. Actually sobbing. And somewhere in the middle of the crying, he said, "She had no right to tell you that." I listened to the message twice. Then deleted it. The next morning, I walked into my attorney's office, signed the final paperwork, and officially filed for divorce. I thought that would be the end. I was wrong. Because Daniel's fantasy about Sophia was about to meet reality, and reality was far less forgiving than he imagined. 3 weeks later, the divorce was officially in motion. Not finalized. Our state required a waiting period before everything could be completed, but the hard part was done. The papers were filed, the attorneys were involved, and, for the first time in years, I could see the finish line. Daniel and I eventually reached an agreement through our lawyers. No dramatic courtroom battles. No screaming matches. No attempts to destroy one another financially. The house would be sold, the equity would be split evenly. We would each keep our own retirement accounts, our own savings, our own vehicles. Clean, simple, fair. Legal fees had taken their bite. The housing market wasn't ideal. Neither of us would walk away with as much as we'd once imagined. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. Because I wasn't measuring my success in dollars, I was measuring it in peace. And peace was finally returning. The fallout, however, was only beginning. Remember all those friends who had been told I suddenly abandoned my loving husband? The ones who called me cruel? The ones who believed Daniel's version of events? Well, the truth has a funny way of spreading. I never posted anything publicly. Never started a social media war. never tried to humiliate him. But when people contacted me directly, accusing me of being heartless, I responded with facts. Nothing more. Screenshots, dates, message, evidence. The story told itself. Onebiwan. The messages stopped. A few people apologized. One mutual friend called me personally. I owe you an apology. I sat quietly listening. I thought you were overreacting. So did Daniel. The friend sighed. Honestly, I always thought it was strange how often he talked about Sophia. That made me laugh. Apparently everyone had noticed except me. Or maybe I had noticed. I just didn't want to believe what it meant. Then there was Margaret. The workplace incident hadn't gone over well, especially after Daniel's father learned about it. Unlike Margaret, his father had always been reasonable, quiet, level-headed, the kind of person who listened before speaking. One evening, I received a text from him. Short, simple, Nathalie. I'm sorry for what happened at your workplace. It was inappropriate. I've addressed it. I wish you the best moving forward. I stared at the message for a long time, not because it fixed anything, nothing could, but because accountability felt so rare after everything I'd experienced. A second message arrived a few minutes later. Daniel finally admitted the meetings with Sophia. He has a lot of growing up to do. I looked out the apartment window. The sun was setting, orange light spilling across the buildings outside. For the first time in months, I didn't feel angry, just tired, and strangely free. Then came the final chapter. The chapter nobody could have written better if they'd tried. Sophia, the woman Daniel had spent 6 years idolizing, the woman he'd held above me, like some impossible standard, the woman who supposedly never disappointed anyone. Life had been moving for her, too, and, unfortunately, for everyone involved. The truth had started reaching places Daniel never expected. Sophia had been in a serious relationship for 4 years. A stable relationship. A relationship that, according to mutual acquaintances, was heading toward an engagement. Then her boyfriend learned about the secret meetings, the emotional conversations, the years of continued contact, and he ended things immediately. Just like that. Gone. The irony wasn't lost on me. A fantasy that had already helped destroy one relationship had now damaged another. But the story wasn't over, because according to several mutual connections, Daniel saw an opportunity. For years he'd acted as though Sophia was the great love of his life, the one who got away, the person who would have made everything perfect. Now both of them were effectively single, no marriage, no boyfriend, no obstacles. The fantasy was finally available. So Daniel reached out. Apparently he poured his heart out, told her they had both made mistakes, told her fate had brought them back together, told her this could be their second chance, their real chance, the chance he'd secretly been imagining for years. When I first heard this through mutual friends, I almost felt sorry for him, almost. Then I learned what happened next. Sophia rejected him, completely, decisively, permanently. No ambiguity. No mixed signals, no possibility of misunderstanding. She told him she had moved on years ago, that the relationship they once had existed only in his imagination now, that he had spent years romanticizing a version of the past that wasn't real. And then she said something that eventually found its way back through mutual friends, something that hit harder than anything else. She told him the way he treated me had changed how she saw him. That watching him compare his wife to another woman for years revealed a side of him she found deeply unattractive. The perfect woman, the impossible standard, the fantasy. Didn't want him, not after seeing who he had become. When I heard that, I laughed. Actually laughed. Alone in my apartment. Not because I wanted him to suffer. I didn't. Despite everything. I genuinely didn't wish him harm. But the irony was breathtaking. He had sacrificed a real relationship for a fantasy, and when he finally reached the fantasy, it wasn't there. It never had been. Months passed. Slowly, quietly. The house sold. The paperwork moved forward. Life kept going. I started therapy. Not because I was falling apart. Because 6 years of being told you're not enough leaves marks, invisible ones, the kind that don't disappear the moment a marriage ends. My therapist helped me understand something important. Daniel's comparisons had never actually been about me. Not really. They were about his dissatisfaction, his insecurity, his inability to let go of an idealized past. I was simply the person standing closest when those issues spilled over. Understanding that didn't erase the damage, but it helped me stop carrying responsibility for it. My friends showed up for me. The real ones, the ones who listened, the ones who didn't need convincing. My older sister, Rebecca, took me out for coffee one afternoon. Halfway through the conversation, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you." I blinked. "For getting divorced?" She smiled sadly. "For finally standing up for yourself." I looked away, because suddenly my eyes were burning. Rebecca continued softly. "I've been worried about you for years." That surprised me. "What do you mean? You got quieter." She paused. "Smela?" The word hit me harder than expected. Smela. That was exactly how I'd felt. Like every comparison had chipped away another piece of me, until I barely recognized myself. Rebecca smiled. "I think you're finally coming back." Some nights were still difficult. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. 6 years is a long time. There had been good memories, good vacations, lazy Sunday mornings, inside jokes, moments when I truly believed we would grow old together. Not everything had been terrible. That's what makes endings complicated. If relationships were bad all the time, nobody would stay. But eventually, the bad outweighed the good. And eventually I had to choose myself. Now I live in a smaller apartment. The furniture doesn't perfectly match. The kitchen is tiny. The bedroom barely fits my dresser. And I love it. Because it's peaceful. No comparison. No criticism. No invisible competition with a ghost. Sometimes I cook dinner and eat alone at my kitchen counter, and it feels wonderful. The other night, I made pasta. The same pasta. The one that started everything. I sat there with a glass of wine and took the first bite. Then I laughed. Not because it reminded me of Daniel. Because it was genuinely good. Perfectly seasoned. Exactly the way I liked it. Nobody complained. Nobody compared it to Sophia's. Nobody told me I wasn't enough. For years I thought saving my marriage meant proving I could become everything Daniel wanted. What I finally learned was much simpler. The right person doesn't make you compete with their past. The right person chooses you fully, every day. And if someone spends years making you feel inadequate, making you question your worth, making you believe you'll never measure up, you are allowed to leave. You are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to stop auditioning for a role you should have already been given. Daniel spent 6 years chasing a fantasy. I spent 6 years trying to defeat it. In the end, neither of us won that battle. Because fantasies aren't real, but freedom is, and for the first time in a very long time, I finally feel free.